Hey, how's it going? Tim, congratulations for winning the 11 Second Club this month. Very, very exciting entry here. I'm super excited to get into it. Tim, you know me because you had me actually as a mentor at Animation Mentor, but everyone else who's meeting me for the first time, my name is Kenny Roy. I've been an animator all my life, pretty much. I've worked on a few movies you may have heard of, Men in Black 2, Scooby-Doo 2, Garfield, King Kong, some TV commercials, TV shows, animated and live action, and now I own my own small boutique animation studio in Los Angeles. It's called Arconix Animation Studios. You can find out a little bit more about what we do at Arconix at arconix.com, ARCONYX.com, or I have a little blog where I talk about stuff about the industry and running a studio at kennyroy.com, so you can find out more there if you're interested. I'm just going to jump right into the critique. Tim, you're very familiar with the way that I like to critique. I like to just get right into it and point out what I like and what I don't like. But also, what I wanted to do just right off the bat was tell everyone sort of what I like to do with my own work when I'm trying to critique my own work and try to find out, what a piece of animation needs to take that one last step or that final 10% of polish. The very best thing that I feel you can do as an animator is make a list. I use Notepad, or you can use WordPad, or you can actually take like a physical piece of paper. What's that, right? And write down all the things you see wrong with animation right when you first sit down. As an animator, normally you work for 8, 10, 12-hour days sometimes. Even on crunch time, you might work even longer than that, unfortunately. But the biggest side effect of working long on a piece of animation is you lose your ability to see what's wrong with it. And that's just the name of the game. That's the way it goes. And there's very little you can do about that, watching an animation over and over and over. As mentors, we give our students the piece of advice to show it to other people, and that's very important as well. But what if there's nobody around, or what if everyone else is way too busy to look at your shot? What can you do for yourself? Well, I say make a list. So I have a document here. I'm going to bring up the screen capture right here. Okay, so here is my Word document. Okay, my little how should we call it? WordPad document rather. It's kind of a little hard to see. Let me turn up the text size. Okay, so here it is. So every single computer ships with WordPad or Notepad, and this is what I like to do. You sit down and you watch it over and over and over, because you're going to lose your eye for the animation eventually. You might as well lose your eye after critiquing it and pointing out the problems than working on it, play blasting, fixing one thing, lose your eye a little bit, may not be able to pick out the next thing that needs work. So here I have a list of all the things that I want to talk about here. Normally I put frame numbers on them. However, since this is a multi-shot piece, the frame numbers are not going to correspond to the frame numbers in his scene files if you use multiple scene files. So it's good to also play blast your shot with individual shot frame counters. But we can talk about that a little bit later. But I did just want to show you that the best thing I can say for an animator who wants to get all of the notes out with their fresh set of eyeballs when they sit down at a piece of animation is to make a list, and definitely make a list as fast as you can, as soon as you can. So here we are at the piece. I'm just going to start at the beginning. I feel like you could push the shapes of the lip sync much more, especially when you're lip syncing. Let me get on my handy tablet here. Especially when you're lip syncing a character who's slightly turned away from camera, okay, with their head tilted downwards, or a character that's in profile. Whenever you're not straight on, you have to push the facial shapes a little bit more. When a character is turned away from camera, let's say you have a profile, you sort of sometimes need to cheat the mouth shapes, like me right here, cheat the smiles a little bit bigger on the side towards camera, you know, like that. So that would be a mouth shape towards camera, what I did just now. But when I turn, you'll see that it's cheated towards camera. It won't look the same from head on. So I'm smiling. You see, I push it. And that's to get the facial shape working towards camera. As 3D animators, a lot of times we have to work in 3D, or all the poses, I should say, need to work entirely in 3D. You need to be able to go all around the scene and make sure that the pose looks good from everywhere. I mean, that's for a lot of different reasons. Lighting, they normally light it with real, like, physically based lights. So a shadow that's cast in the scene needs to look like it's going to give away if you're cheating the pose way too much. The shadow is. Cloth sim, hair simulation, all these things are limiting factors on the kind of poses you can take. But normally facial animation, you have a little bit more liberty to cheat towards camera. You won't have that big a problem. I also read a piece on Horton Hears the Who, where at Blue Sky they had basically you had this big trunk in the way, right? So you had your character's eyes and this big trunk in the way. So if the mouth was hidden away underneath the trunk, I read this piece where they were able to select the mouth and move it a little bit out here, so you can get that, you know, you can get the mouth shape that you want and move it out of the way of where the trunk is. So you know, in Blue Sky they had the good foresight to know that the trunk was going to block a lot of facial shapes, and they put cheating tools in the hands of their animators, which is really good. So where I wanted to start was, I'm really not getting the kind of clean read on these facial shapes, especially in the beginning. The lip sync is very muddled for me in this first line.
What was the cause of your husband's death, ma'am? Do you know?
And even when he comes up here and says, "Do you know?" I feel like you could telegraph that a little bit more. Do you know? No. Almost all the vowels are diphthongs. No is almost ah-oo. In different dialects and different accents, it's different. But in American English, it's ah-oo. So you normally want to, if it's a diphthong that starts with an ah, like the I in fire, it's actually ah-e, fire. You see that? If you slow it down, it's fire. So you normally want to, in order to telegraph that lip sync, you want to stick on the, I paused it on this frame, and look, we got almost an ah shape from her. You normally want to stick on the ah shape longer than the end of the diphthong, like the oo or the o or the e. For an I sound, like ah-e, you want to stay on the ah. So, do you know? Instead of do you know. See the difference there? We're not getting as much. First of all, when I say telegraph, I mean you need to have a larger, more pronounced facial shape, and that is most significantly helped out by a very open mouth. So, in order to telegraph it, stick to the ah shape, because the ah is very open, where the oo is like in the background. And if you can imagine, if your character was even further in the background, if his head was that big, if you said "do you know," and you were just going straight to that oo shape, you'd lose everything. In fact, I'm going to try to keep my mouth I'm going to say "do you know" without opening my mouth at all. Do you know? See how like almost nothing happened, and you really didn't get read. Did you know? Much cleaner. So I would say all these facial shapes in the beginning here you need to telegraph, cheat towards camera, pronounce them a little bit clearer, and work with the diphthongs. Also, when you're working in your graph editor, your keys. Let's say that this is your like a facial blend shape animation curve. Your keyframes on your jaw, this bottom one is the jaw, your keyframes shouldn't always line up. They're going to at certain points, okay? But they shouldn't all line up, okay? There is a disconnect between the jaw and the lips that makes certain facial shapes work in the middle of words and not at the end of words, and vice versa. Sometimes a consonant sound or a consonant shape will look much different at the beginning of one word and the beginning of another word, like the or the and through. You're almost already in that R to the oo shape, or on the th of through, like that, through, as you are with the, where you're sort of already beginning to grow that smile, the. You know what I mean? So it's I know you know this, but I'm going over it again. You don't want to ever get to a point where you're so comfortable with certain standards of a facial shape, like th always looks like this. It's a much more blended process than picking a facial shape and then moving on to the next one. And I describe it as a disconnect between what the lips are doing and what the jaw is doing. And the one way you can do it is put your hand underneath your jaw and push up, so you're almost holding your head up, and speak, like say a word. My word I like to use is soccer. Most people would animate. I'm going way off your animation here, but maybe it's applicable to what other people are doing. Most people would think, here's the jaw rotation on soccer. They say pencil, soccer. There we go, soccer. But if you slow down, put your hand under there, you realize that your mouth only opens once, and the k shape of the double C actually happens on the closing of your mouth. Soccer, soccer, soccer. Weird, right? Kind of strange. So the jaw, instead of looking like this, it actually is just really nice. And your lips, however, your lips have two shapes. They need to go from that consonant S sort of smiling shape, okay, here that is, to sort of like the pursed lip ooh R kind of shape. I like to mix my blend shapes whenever I'm making an R with sort of like a sneer and an ooh shape, like that. So let's say that this represents that. Okay, so as you can see right here, this being your jaw on soccer, this being your consonant shape, and this being your other consonant shape, you get a much clearer picture of the sort of the syncopated but also interpolated way that the jaw and the lips move together. So I would say in going back and working on the lip sync of this shot, you want to have do a pass. First of all, put your hand underneath your jaw and do a pass where you're really simplifying but amping up the size of your jaw movements, and making sure not to, like if you get to a word like soccer, not doing or critiquing your own animation and looking at your own curves and making sure you didn't go soccer. You just went soccer, soccer, okay? And I really think that will make a large impact on the legibility of your lip sync in this piece. I did want to say that the not only push the shapes, but there are Okay, killed him from her. Let's see, let's find out.
Oh, yes. I killed him.
Her lip sync actually looks like it's
Oh,
off.
yes.
In
I
timing.
killed him.
It actually looks like it's a little early, and we're waiting for a shape. You almost end a whole word early on that. So not only amp up the shapes and revisit your jaw pass. I would look at the timing of that. I actually I might be a little bit weird, and maybe I'm giving you bad advice. Maybe I'm a bad animator for doing it this way, but I like to do an entire jaw pass because I find that if my jaw is right on, then I almost can do no wrong with these facial shapes. And maybe you want to give that a shot. Do an entire right on jaw pass, and then see what happens. Okay, some little stuff. There's some little hitches in the eyebrows, both of them actually, that look like, especially in this section, that look like they are the product of having a little bit too overlappy eyebrows. You're a very accomplished facial animator in that your faces always seem very fleshy. In your short film, I remember that I got a huge boost in excitement from seeing how fleshy even your blocked-in faces were. And then when you were polishing, I felt great about watching your animation and letting you just go wild with it. Here, I think you've gone just maybe one notch too far in introducing overlap, which is a great way to make the face feel very, very solid and fleshy. If you have a lot of overlap, especially on a character who's like old and like their eyebrows and they sort of come to a stop and there's a little bit of jiggle in their face, it really kicks up the fleshiness a huge notch. It gives it a big bump in realism and effect. Really, that uncanny valley, I would say, is partly described by in facial animation. Not only just the dead eyes, that would be about 75% of it, but I also think it's like the fleshiness of the face, and the principles of animation also apply to the face. Squash and stretch and anticipation, follow through, overlap, those kind of things. So you're very good at it here, but especially in the eyebrows of this section, I would say you might have gone a little too far. Let's watch it.
What was the cause of your husband's death, ma'am?
See that a little bit? Just a few too much of
What was the cause of your husband's? What was?
Yeah, it's really on this one because his head goes down, and that looks like pure overlap to me. That does not look like effective primary animation. It looks like secondary motion, which is not to be confused with secondary action, which is what I wanted to move on to next. Your choice of holding the hat still the entire animation. Let's talk about that.
Ma'am, do you know?
Oh, yes. I killed him.
You killed him?
Oh, yes.
Okay, secondary
What was the
motion.
cause of your-
Secondary motion is different than secondary action. Secondary motion, as we know, is sort of like, whatever, you swing your head and your ponytail, overlaps around, and normally the principle that is employed the most frequently with secondary motion is overlap. Okay. Secondary action is when there's an action that is not the primary action. It's not a result of the primary action. It's something someone else is doing. So, for instance, I'm talking to you and I'm twirling my pen. If I'm twirling my pen, you know that I have at least as much CPU power left in my brain to talk to you right now and twirl the pen. But if you say something that really makes me angry or really gets my attention, let's say, you ran over my dog, and I stop. It's almost as if you were charging up. You were sort of imbuing energy into this, not only this area of the screen right here where my hand was, but also this part of my body. So it's a 2D and a 3D effect, okay, in the composition and in the character, okay. So if if you charge that up, you want to make sure that there is a moment where you sort of release the charge. So, for instance, if you're talking to me and I'm twirling the pen and it doesn't seem like I'm paying attention, you say, "I killed your dog," and I stop. You know that all of a sudden all that energy that I was putting in there is released, and it has a huge impact. The more subtle it is, it's almost reverse. It's almost like I can't really come up with an analogy for it. It's almost like homeopathy, where the greater the dilution, the more powerful the solution. But I digress. So with your hat, I feel like you miss an opportunity to have a really powerful secondary action, because the secondary action is actually him holding it still to his body.
Because of your husband's death, ma'am, do you know?
Oh, yes. I killed him.
You killed him?
Okay, I'm not sure if you're getting that for free with SK arms, or if you are actually animating that hand stiff to the body with IK arms. I'm not sure. Actually, I'm not familiar with tools. You might actually have IK switches that you can wire the hand to the body. So this might not apply. But all I'm saying is that you have him holding his hat up, and that's sort of a secondary action because it takes effort to hold something up. And so if he dropped it a little bit when he said, "You killed him," it would almost serve to really emphasize his disbelief and his shock in that moment, that he can't even hold his hat up, or he forgets that he's holding his hat, still or against his body. So I think that would have been a very effective acting choice to make, and you could still make it, and it would improve the effect of this background character's impact immensely. I also think his face is a little bit too concerned right here, and not as much disbelief. That's another note I had. Kind of when he turns, like, "You killed him," and not "You killed him," like surprise and disbelief. It's more like he's considering it, like, well, what would that mean? Before he realizes, oh, I've got some of the poison on my finger. So another part in this section right here, you sort of do the overlappy thing again. Not only are the fingers twinned, but they're very overlappy in this section.
I killed him.
You killed him?
You see that?
I killed him.
You killed him?
They're very fleshy, and I like how they move. You might just want to, like, just grab the animation curves, just grab them all, and just scale it, just scale it in half. Just go right here. And I think you'll have a little bit more happy medium. Also, you want to untwin them. No matter what you do, you're going to have to untwin them.
Do you know?
Oh, yes. I killed him.
You killed him?
They're moving very twinned. Not so much in the first section. I like what you did in here. I would carry through that kind of nice, untwinned, organic action through the rest of it. Her eyeline hitches as the drop falls. The second drop. Now, here's the thing. Normally, eyeline hitches are good. When people look across, if they're tracking an object, your eyes can move smoothly. But if you're looking from left to right, your eyes hit things ever so slightly, of course, but they do hit points. It's normally a good thing to put in, but I do feel like even if your point is to make it so that she's looking at the drop and then the pie, which is down here, that it is just a little bit too jarring a pose change, and I would rather have you track the drop instead with that. Her hands look a little IK as she puts the bottle away. Watch as it sort of comes up sort of only in translation. Normally with IK hands you have to have a little bit of rotation, otherwise it just looks IK. You've got to rotate that up, even if that means doing a little bit of counter animation with the bottle in her hands. Okay, and then her hands look again a little IK in this last section. That doesn't feel all that natural, a moving hold. I would say it would be better to rotate it than to translate it as much right there. Untwin her eye blink, or untwin all the eye blinks in the end here. I think they're all twinned in the end, whereas in the beginning I don't think they are. Maybe they are. I only noticed it in the end. This is my note for the end. Okay, so it looks like you need to do a little bit of untwinning everywhere with the eye blinks. Hold consonant face shapes on long consonant sounds. Oh yeah, her facial animation, the biggest thing that I was feeling like we were missing shapes is that she doesn't hold those long consonant sounds, or facial shapes. Normally we say, oh yes, and we're holding that shape long after the S sound stops coming out. It's not like we go, yes, and like we change our facial shape to stop the S. We normally just stop the air. We cut the air off, and then our face relaxes. So yes. You see the difference there? Secondary action, talked about that. Oh. Alright, two more things. I know we're running out of time here. Little things. First, he looks a little stiff on his turn in the torso. She's a little bent over too much in that last vertebrae. I keep telling people, like, your rib cage are all wired up here. You got your collarbones and your scapulas. Everything is all like bunchy up in here, and you don't get much bend in your upper back. Whereas with the the way models are set up, it's just way too tempting to get the shape you want by bending them, right underneath that first vertebrae or that first control. You need to distribute rotations down the spine a little more. That's a little bit too much just in that top one. Also, in this little motion she does right here, I feel like it's too much translation. It's like she's standing up to say yes and emphasize. I like much better the elbows that you use on him, but I do feel like that elbow is shoulder movement is a little popped. It's a little poppy for me. The one thing, the last big things I want to mention before we get too long here is that I like the idea of a swipe, but it's occluded by the pie. So I would move this action where we can see it, like right on the top of the pie. And you chose a color. I know that her pie has red filling, but you chose a color that is, so close to blood. I thought until I watched it like 10 times, admittedly I kind of missed the whole gag, that was blood on his finger. And I was watching her too much to notice that he was putting it in his mouth, like the first 5 times that I watched it. And then I got the gag. So what I'm saying is maybe you want to just calm this motion on her part down just a tiny bit, because it's happening right as he puts his finger in his mouth. And that's a little bit too much competition. Remember, it's a tennis match, as I think Jason Schleifer puts it in his lecture. So be careful with that. And the last thing I wanted to say was her second. Oh yes, let's watch.
Killed him?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
One more time.
You killed him?
Oh, yes.
When I listen to that dialogue, I feel like you put a little bit too much focus on her oh yes. To me, the dialogue sounds much more distracted, much more disconnected to what she's doing than to give it a dedicated look forward, even with an eye dart in the middle. It sounds more of a focus on what she's doing still, over the shoulder, maybe turn the head, oh yes, but still be focused on what's in front of her than what I see here. It's definitely a confident acting choice, and I love that you work very confidently. Most animation directors would much rather correct you and work with you and let you have your ideas shine through in the final animation. If you make confident choices, then work with someone who is wishy-washy and tentative and only goes halfway with their ideas, and just has to noodle and push and tweak, and it's just no fun. The process becomes very laborious. So I love this confident choice. I do think it was slightly the wrong choice, though. I would go with a more disconnected, distracted, keep her focused on what she's doing kind of reaction. That's what I hear in the dialogue, more so than looking up and acknowledging the line, acknowledging the answer, even with an eye dart. And that eye dart is a little unexplained. I don't know what to make of it. What her eyes are darting across from. We're out of time here, so I got to move on. But I really love the animation. I think you did a fantastic job. There's so many possibilities with this line, and you chose a very, very difficult one to balance with the tennis match of where the eye goes, background and foreground. I think you handled it very well, except for that one point that I pointed out just now. So, as always, it's a very, very distinct pleasure to look at your work and critique your work. I wish you much success and animation fun in the future. And as always, rock on.